Press the bell icon on YouTube and don't miss another update.
Namaste and welcome to this 10 p.m. session on Jaipur Dialogues on the New Year's Eve. And before I forget, I wish you all a happy New Year, just in case I fail to remember it when I end the session. And I have a topic which many people are discussing, and that also, of course, because this Christmas, a lot of people who said, okay, we're not going to wish you Christmas because you don't wish us anything. So I think that's perfectly okay. It should be reciprocal. If you do not wish your Hindu neighbor Diwali, don't expect him to wish you Christmas anyway. And I think in the West, they have a far healthier attitude. They don't go around wishing everybody Merry Christmas. They don't have the charade of Hindus wishing Hindus Merry Christmas without knowing what it all entails. So we have Melissa Kapoor ji with us today.
Namaste, Sanjay.
Good evening. Namaste, Melissa ji. And this is the topic. It says Christianity and lovely. Why would anyone say so? Because they profess themselves to be the religion of love. And they say that, Jesus brings everybody love. And they bring you the good news. And they say that Jesus is coming. Jesus is coming. Of course, they've been saying that for a very long time. And they've been predicting the end of the world for also a very long time. And the last time, I think it was attempted by Isaac Newton, who gave 1920 as the D-Day. But nothing happened. And now we are in 2020, exactly 100 years over. So I don't know what the predictions are, but we definitely do know that the evangelicals in India are a scourge, especially in South India. And they are trying to devastate communities with their antics, and they definitely do not bring love. So would you like to define your concept of why you say that Christianity aren't lovely?
Absolutely. Dhanyavad, Sanjay ji. Very important topic. But just before I begin, I just want to say many congratulations to you for Unbreaking India. It's really amazing how well the book is doing, and it's really spreading some new narratives, some truth out there. So many thanks and congratulations. Okay, so back to...
Thank you, Melissa. Have you read it?
I haven't yet. I have ordered it, and I've ordered it to family about 2 weeks ago. But yes, I've got actually one Rajiv Malhotra book, one Rajiv Malhotra Ji book to read first, and then I'm on to yours. I've got a...
yes, certainly. Most certainly.
Okay, so yes, Christianity ain't lovely. So as you just mentioned, a really topical point of discussion coming off the back of Christmas, because I, as a slight outsider living in the UK and coming from the West, I can see when I'm interacting with people in India, with Hindus, a real sort of like step change in their mindset towards Christianity and the influence of Christianity over how they're thinking, on their attitudes, is just getting stronger and stronger. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm just going to spend a few minutes just telling you people in India, in Bharat, what Christmas and Christianity is like in the UK, because I think that's very misunderstood. People in India often think that Christmas and Christianity are, or Christmas is very Christian, and that Christianity is very strong in the West, and that's just not true at all. So I just want to sort of debunk a few of these myths. So in the West, obviously, Christianity is still the majority religion. And in the past, it was, pretty much the exclusive religion. And because there are such ugliness, that there is such an ugly side to Christianity, that number has just fallen off a cliff. In fact, it's about 3% of people in the UK who regularly attend church now. And that's because
just
the rest
3%.
of the population, just 3%, yeah. And that is going to, they forecast that it basically is going to disappear in a few generations, because basically it's really much just the elderly population now who regularly attend church. It's hardly any young people. But what's interesting is the church and just Western society have gone to great lengths to kind of mask the ugliness in Christianity. And it's quite obvious to me now when I look at, some of like the West End and Broadway productions of Jesus Christ Superstar and Joseph and his Technicolor Dreamcoat. They're kind of romanticizing different events in the Bible that are actually quite ugly. Or even in my primary school, because I went to a Church of England primary school, we were, as sort of 6, 7-year-olds, reenacting the part of the Bible from the Old Testament where you have the scene with Moses, traveling from Egypt back to the Promised Land. And basically we were reenacting a scene where when you read the Bible, it says that God commands Moses to kill all of the non-believing women, men, and children, but spare the virgins. You can keep those for yourselves as slaves and take them back with you. So there's this ugliness that as children we were reenacting without realizing it, obviously, and it was coming across as what a lovely scene from the Bible. So the church has gone to great lengths, and society in the West has gone to great lengths to kind of conceal its ugliness. But deep down, people in the West know there is ugliness. They know that women were often thought of as witches and were burned at the stake or drowned. They know that there is discrimination against non-believers, that they're thought to be the worst kind of being possible. They know there's terrible things written about homosexuals, that slavery is promoted, etc., etc. And I even remember as a child, a very young child, maybe about 6 years old, my mum coming home from church and just shaking her head and saying, I just don't get it, because she'd listened to a sermon from the priest saying that, or rather recalling the episode in the Bible where the Christian God is telling a family basically to kill their children to prove their faith in that God. Now that's a very different thing from offering or sacrificing your children for dharma, for some good reason, but for such a nonsensical reason. My mum really had issues with, why is the Bible saying this? So people are aware of this ugliness. They may, in the West, they may not know, or maybe they've never probed deep into the Bible to actually read the ugly verses for themselves, but deep down they know that it's ugly, and that's why they've rejected it. And why actually, when you look at Christmas in the West, it's very, very, very much more sort of like in the secular vein, where the Christmas cards I receive have sheep on the front, or a picture of a dog, or a picture of a polar bear. There's nothing Jesus-y or biblical about it. And when you walk past all the houses here, yes, they're decorated with lights and things, but it's often just Santa stop here or something. It's not Jesus-y. And that's even in our village, which actually is relatively sort of churchy. We have 3 churches in a very tiny village, one of which is actually kind of abandoned because there just aren't enough people attending. But even with a small village having 2 churches, you don't see much sort of Christian imagery around. Outside one of the churches, there are 2 sort of like cardboard cutouts of Mary and Jesus, I think it is, but that's literally it. And when you read like the village magazine, which is published by the church, the sort of imagery, the content in there is actually very sort of understated in its Christian tones. And I'm bringing this all up because in the India, I see things are so in your face. It's so Jesus-y. And I'll get onto that in a bit more in just a moment. But I just wanted to make also the point that I did receive one very strongly Christian Christmas card this year, and it is from a school friend who was targeted at university by basically the missionaries, and she joined this very radical, very strong Christian church. It happened to a couple of my friends. I mean, I myself was targeted at university by Christians trying to convert me sort of stronger into Christianity. And I'd be sitting doing my work in the library, and they'd come and sit next to you and strike up a conversation, and next thing you know, they've got the Bible out and they're asking you questions. So it happens very easily. And when you're on your own for the first time at university, you can see how you could get drawn into the friendship circle first of all, and before you know it, like in the case of my school friend, she's attending a church, and I remember attending her church once for her wedding, and up on the wall was the picture of the world. And they were mapping out all their different missions across the world, like a military operation almost. So, you know, these kinds of people, they certainly do exist. But as I mentioned before, only 3% of the UK population is regularly attending church. The rest are, you know, about 60% of the UK population at the moment, they tick the box that they are Christian, but it's more because they don't really know what else to tick. In fact, 40% of those people, 40% of those 60% say, yes, I ticked Christianity, but I don't believe anything in the Bible, or I don't believe in Jesus. They just don't know what else to tick. They know there's a higher power, but they've got no other option, because they know they don't want to tick the Muslim box, and they don't know anything about any other religions, so they tick the Christian box. So yes, there is this really strong Christian sort of core in a very small number of people. But you have to realize that this strong number of people, they are very committed, because they know, as strong Christians, their purpose, and it's a very arrogant stance to take when you think about it, but their purpose is to go around converting people to what they believe is true. And now they've got no proof for this. It's just their belief, and they'll go to any length to try and convert people to the way they very arrogantly are thinking without any proof. And it's, to them, they're just doing what the Bible tells them. They're doing what Jesus tells them in the Bible. And there are many quotes within, you know, the New Testament saying, you know, non-believers are the worst, that they will burn in fire, they should be destroyed, that they shall perish, and that it's their duty. So I'm reading from Mark 16:15-16. Go ye into all the world and preach the gospel to every creature. He that believeth and is baptized shall be saved, but he that believeth not shall be damned. And then you look through, you know, Luke, John, Jude, Acts, Revelations. I've gone through them all. And, you know, each of them includes verses saying unbelievers and idolaters, so people who were worshipping mortis, essentially, they will burn in fire, they shall be destroyed, they shall perish. So people in the West, we know these things. We're aware that there is this ugliness, and also, you know, ugliness to do with women, homosexuals, slaves, etc., etc. But as I mentioned right at the beginning, it has been, even here, quite cleverly masked, so that, yes, they don't say, I'm a Christian, I don't really identify with, you know, believe what's written in the Bible, but at the same time, they wouldn't go around sort of saying bad things about the Bible, and maybe even they had quite a sort of sweetened view of the Bible. And I'm just going to leave this question now, this answer, with two things. So firstly, an academic study which showed that in the Old Testament, there is twice as much violence and anger than in the Quran. So what they did is they analyzed the text and they classified each word based on the emotion that it generally conveys into, you know, is it a sweet word? Is it an angry word? Is it a violent word? And they found in the Old Testament, it was twice as violent and less trusting than the Quran. Now, people often say, well, you know, that's the Old Testament. And some Christians will say, well, I don't really follow the Old Testament. It's just the New Testament for me. But then when you compare the New Testament to the Quran, even there, it's 2% more violent than the Quran. Now, people just don't realize this, even in the West. I read about a prank that was played by a comedian in the Netherlands a few years ago. And what he did is he took off the cover of a Bible and he replaced it with the cover of a Quran. And he dressed up as a Muslim man and stood in the corner of a high street and read out from the Bible. And then passers-by were absolutely shocked and appalled and disgusted by what he was reading out. And then afterwards, when he asked them, what did you think I was reading it? They assumed it was the Quran. And when he said, no, it's the Bible, they just wouldn't believe him. They denied it until he showed them the proof. And then they were equally disgusted by the Bible. So it goes to show that Christianity really has so much ugliness. But what Christianity's been very good at, it's been very clever at masking it. In the West, to some extent, to the point where people don't want to associate themselves very strongly with Christianity anymore, but at the point where they don't really want to criticize it too much. But the danger comes in India, where there is such so many forces acting to convert and to influence and to change mindsets in India. So that cleverness is just becoming so dangerous. And I think probably at some point today in this session, we might discuss, the danger of Christianity in India and just how clever the Christians are being in their sort of soft conversion tactics as well as their hard conversion tactics.
That's an excellent overview that you've given. And of course, you already mentioned the Old Testament and the New Testament. But of course, a lot of people believe, and I tend to go with them, is that the very first book of the Old Testament, that is the beginning of the Bible, and that is the chapter of Genesis, that itself is so full of hate against knowledge. That is, you say that if you eat the fruit of knowledge, then you sin. And the natural impulses of procreations, they become sin. And then everything, all the narrative is to how to wash off that sin. Then they make the woman the lesser being, and then they make all sort of commentary on how human beings are actually the fallen people. And then out of that fallen people, then they go on and they make a racist narrative out of that, the Ham, Shem, and Japheth narrative. And that kind of continues with all the violence that happens in Exodus and all the other books of the Old Testament. And it's corroborated, as you said, in the New Testament, as you said that, okay, the Old Testament contains, you said, 100% more violence. And even the New Testament contains 2% more violence than the Quran. And that's a pretty graphic description, I think. And let's see, the basic doctrines itself are compromised. So when the basic doctrine itself is compromised, based on dogma, based on blind belief, then I think it doesn't really remain so lovely indeed, as you said.
Absolutely. So the idea behind Christianity, I've come to realize, is that it feeds on fear. That is its whole premise. And it's how it survives, essentially, by establishing this hierarchy of people, of society that has all these problems where the woman is not seen to have any level of equality with a man. In fact, I was reading that in Roman society in about 500 AD, there was a big debate going on within the Catholic Church of, do women even have souls? Because when you read the Bible itself, it says very clearly that the fall of humanity will originate from women, that women have no power of their own, that they have to submit to men in everything, that the natural order in human affairs, such as that wives must obey their husbands because they're lesser than the greater. So there are so many instances within the Bible itself where you're creating this shame within women for being a lesser being, for being the original source of sin, of being sort of like a temptress, it's seen. And at the same time, you're creating in the husband and the men's minds that women are temptresses, and therefore you must always be suspicious of them. So in so many relationships, in so many ways, it's creating distrust, it's creating trouble within society, so that then they look up to the priest to then guide them and almost seem to be the savior, giving them the control, paying them money, making big donations to the church, and the priest lives very comfortably. And on top of that, then obviously the priest is seen to be looking up to God. So there's this clear hierarchy that is purely designed to create trouble within society, so that the church can survive and be rich and, you know, all these terrible, terrible things. So fear is so, so central. And the other aspect is it's so patriarchal. And that feeds very much into the, again, another core belief, which is, you know, you have to go out and preach and convert, because it feeds into this idea of go out and conquer souls, conquer land. And when women are so subjugated and oppressed in a society, it kind of gives free rein to men with you know, testosterone filled men to go out and conquer the world and feel that they're, you know, doing God's work and converting people and stealing land, that's their justification. It's God's work. And again, it's just another way of creating destruction, creating fear in the world to feed this ugly, ugly machine, which is Christianity. So to me, that is the core of Christianity. It's real fear and ugliness. And as you mentioned, things like racism, slavery, hatred towards knowledge, all of these things have been other ways in which there's been, you know, fear and destruction because of Christianity. You know, you look at scientists. Until a few hundreds of years ago, scientists could not just do scientific work and make observations on the universe, on their solar system, without getting hanged or burned at the stake. So in so many ways, it is ugly. And as you very rightly say, it stems from right from the beginning, from Genesis, looking at what are the original sins. It's things like knowledge, it's things like women, and it's just such an unhealthy mindset.
So you were born as a you were born and you were raised as a Christian, and I think you told us that your grandparents were very devout and your parents were a light Christian family, and so you've seen it all. Did you see this? Did you feel this discrimination growing up?
So growing up, so as a child, quite often what they do is the children go and sit in Sunday school while the adults sit in the church proper and hear the sermon. So in Sunday school, again, it's very much the sweet side that you get lulled into. It's, you know, colouring in pictures after hearing a very saccharine version of an episode from the Bible. So growing up, not so much. But as I mentioned, my mum, but as the adults, my mum would often come out of church and be, you know, shaking her head and just, so as they target the adults at that point with the discrimination, with the real ugliness, you kind of get lulled into it as a child, and then they expose you to the ugliness as an adult.
Okay, and now that you have moved to Sanatana Dharma, what difference do you feel here?
Very good point. Okay, so for me, Sanatana Dharma feels like freedom. It feels like my possibilities have been expanded. So there are some real concrete ways in which I've seen such positive impacts on me personally. So firstly, I enjoy life so much more because in Sanatana Dharma, you know, Zindagi, life, it is about, you know, it is just celebrated. And that's, you know, through the culture as well as through the Shastras. You know, everything is colorful, everything is lively, and it's just so, it just gives you so much energy, I find. That's why I love to be in India, because it just gives you so much life, it feels like. But then other concrete ways in which it's really helped me is particularly in my mental strength. And it's worth touching firstly on the point that I feel one of the reasons why mental health is such an issue in the West is because there is the idea that we are born in sin and that we have to constantly be proving ourselves in order to reach heaven. You know, that's such a damaging way of thinking about your life, and particularly that you only have one life in which to achieve everything. Sanatana Dharma has given me so much mental strength because firstly, it thinks in such massive time scales. Whereas in Christianity, you know, or even just in the West generally, everything feels like it's happened in the last 2,000 years only. Everything important in all of the world has happened in the last 2,000 years. and everything important in the world has happened in Europe or America. Whereas Sanatana Dharma has a much more like universal view on things, and the time scales it thinks on are billions of years and cycles of yugas. So in many ways it helps you to put things into perspective, I find, because you realize you're just a small part in this big cosmos. And yes, you have problems day to day, but these are problems that you need to face on your journey towards moksha, which is a very long journey. And if you make some mistakes along the way, DK, it's okay. You learn, you develop as a person. So the mental strength has really been a big thing for me. The courage has been another one. When there are so many inspirational leaders, so many inspirational individuals from Bharat's history, from the Shastras to look up to, and particularly strong women. And I say that because in the West, there are very few sort of strong women that you can consider sort of role models. There was Queen Elizabeth I, but she was just very strong. She wasn't a very good person, obviously, but she was a very strong woman. But in Sanatana Dharma in Bharat, there are so many examples. Ahilya Holkar ji, Rani Durgavati ji, Lakshmi Bai ji. And so so many role models, but also at the same time, just the sense that women are, and I think I'm probably right in saying this, are considered in many ways, more involved spiritually or more sensitive than men, and that is worshipped, it's celebrated. And when you look at Navratri and you see the different forms of Ma Shakti, and all her glorious forms, from being calm and kind and peaceful, all the way through to being fierce and a warrioress. It's just so inspiring as a woman, because in the West, because there has been this divisive nature within Christianity to suppress women, to let men go out on their own and conquer the world and conquer souls and things. There's been this clear division between men and women, which remains to this day. And it's why there's this feminist movement in the West, because women have been so oppressed for so long that pendulum has now swung the other way. So that either it's ultra, really shallow feminism, or you kind of reject your femininity. And I think I fell previously into the latter camp of trying to reject my femininity so that I could compete with the men. That's literally how we were brought up to believe, that to compete with the men, we had to go into science and technology and reject arts, for example. So in all these ways, I feel now as a woman so much more confident and so much more free, and so much more powerful, I must say, because of Sanatana Dharma. So those are some real reasons why it has been so beneficial to me to discover Sanatana Dharma and to enjoy my journey through Sanatana Dharma.
Okay. And you also compare the Sanatana festivals with the Christian festivals. And of course, we know that in growing up as a Hindu, as a Sanatana Dharmi, we, of course, were never taught that women were any different. In fact, women were often in the family and in the pantheon and within the puja room. They had either an equal or very many times, depending on the preference of the person who was doing the worship, would have even a superior status. So we never felt this difference at all. And it is our Western education that brought us this feeling into us. In fact, I started feeling it when I really started getting some dose of Western education when I went to college. Because till my school, I was still okay, because I was in smaller places and we were getting regular education in a very provincial kind of a setup. So we felt it only after we went to something called, I was a marine engineer, where we were exclusively, in fact, the recruitment standard was that a person has to be male, merchant navy. So merchant navy was an exclusive male privilege. And that is where I started getting these vibes. And then when I went to the West and I saw this artificial freedom, which you just mentioned, that this sudden urge to assert themselves coming out of, I think, some kind of a complex. That I realized they are only because all through our families, because I was in a very kind of a middle class family from Uttar Pradesh, living through small towns mostly. And the women were really empowered. I think I did not know a family where the woman was not in the driver's seat of decision making, at least for the family. And that's how it was through our entire cultural experience. But now when I see the Indian feminists, I really scratch my head. Who are they trying to liberate? They're trying to liberate the liberated.
Absolutely. And if I may, I might just touch on the point of festivals a bit more, because having coming off the back of Christmas, it really has made me worry about the future of Sanatana Dharma and the major festivals in Hinduism in Bharat, because you see on the one hand, Diwali being so suppressed now, completely attacked, the crackers being banned and so many things. And this year I really noticed that I received so few sort of Diwali wishes, Shubh Diwali. I actually only received one from family or friends in India, whereas in previous years I've received many more. And so it just made me really worry then when I look at what's happening with Christmas and how that is getting so big in India. And, I'm receiving so many Christmas wishes instead from friends and family in India. And why it's worrying me particularly is because when you look back at the history of Christianity, trace it right back, to the Roman Empire, that sort of time, what they did to establish the church and Christianity is they initially tried to destroy the pagan spiritual sites in the rest of Europe. And when somebody wouldn't convert, they would, kill them essentially. But they realized it'd be more efficient if they just converted the people. And they did that in very clever means, again, by replacing the iconography, the symbols within the pagan sites of worship with the cross, with pictures of Jesus. And they digested the pagan faith into Christianity, and basically that place of worship suddenly then would become a church. It was only at that point, if people would still resist, that they would again just kill them essentially. And there are many sort of mass graves in the UK, for example, where the people were just killed in their thousands because they refused to convert to Christianity. And so the way Christmas came about is because when you look at the evidence within the Bible about what were the crops that were growing at the time that, if there was a Jesus, that he was born, and what was the weather like at that time, it actually places his date of birth in September, not on the 25th of December. But what they did is they realized that the clever way to convert people into Christianity is to say, well, the birth of Jesus coincides with the date of a pagan festival. And it was apparently in Italy the date where the pagans would worship the Roman sun god, so the equivalent of Surya Dev. And it was also then in the rest of Europe about the time of the winter solstice. So people were celebrating anyway, and they very cleverly just injected Christian influence into these existing festivals and celebrations. And then it converted into Christmas, Mass of Christ. It's a Christian festival. And what's so worrying is you see this same tactic now happening in Bharat. So there is, yes, that sort of soft conversion piece where they're getting sucked into like the Father Christmas, Santa Claus idea and buying presents. So there's like the materialistic issue to that. because when I look at, my neighbors here or photos of my nephew, the amount of plastic and waste and garbage that's created during Christmas week is horrendous. In fact, the carbon footprint of the average person in the UK increases 7-fold during Christmas week. So there's that sort of ugly angle to Christmas. But then there's the hard conversion approach too, which is then where you see really strong Christian imagery come up. And I mean like really strong. Like in the West, they wouldn't dare put that in the Village magazine, this big, full page picture of Jesus. They wouldn't dare do that because people would just laugh at it, because Christianity is very sort of seen as old-fashioned, it's not trendy at all. And yet in India, it's coming across so strong in these WhatsApp forwards, in emails. For example, my husband, he's got some bank accounts out there, and they're sending these Christmas wishes over email. You see on social media, people are taking photos from different newspapers, and it's big full page pictures of Jesus. So it's just coming across so strongly. And what's so concerning is how Hindus are just getting sucked into this, and particularly, unfortunately, even the Hindu leaders. And now this is a big issue, a big issue, I find, when you have Sadhguru tweeting or posting on Facebook 5 times on Christmas Day about Jesus, when you have Sri Ravi Shankarji wearing Christmas clothing and taking photos, where you have the Vedanta Society putting basically full Christian sermons up on YouTube with organ music playing and big pictures of Jesus. Like, the kind of confusion this is creating for Hindus is very bad. But what makes it so dangerous is that it is coming at a time where Hindus are already very confused and have very low self-confidence. At a time where, many Hindus that I know, whenever you talk about Hinduism, Hindutva, to them, they recoil it back in your face, and they bring up things like caste system, the dasis, many of the sati, all the misconceptions about Hinduism that were created by the British Raj and that have persevered through Western academic studies of India and Hinduism, which are, have very much an agenda to make India look bad, to make Hinduism look very backward. And they're sucked into this so strongly, and that is why it's so dangerous when they're thinking all these bad things about Hinduism, about Sanatana Dharma, but at the same time holding Christianity and anything basically associated with white skin on a pedestal, with such high regard. And so all I can see happening is that they are aspiring to do things that they think the Westerner or the person with white skin is doing, and they are rejecting everything to do with Sanatana Dharma, everything with their culture. And so that is why it's so dangerous. And I can share a few anecdotes of like real stark instances of this. So on the one hand, we have someone in our family who says her Ishtadev is baby Jesus. So that automatically means that, if your Ishtadev is baby Jesus, then you don't believe that in karma, you don't believe in rebirth, you believe the things that Jesus believed, right? Or when I talk to family and they're bemoaning the situation of women's safety in India, and I'm trying to convey to them, look at the statistics on rape, and you'll see that India is way, way, way down the bottom. But in the US, in the UK, the rate is so much higher. You show them these statistics and they just blindly will not believe you. They're so stubborn. And, this comes at a time when, pedophilia in the church is actually really high profile in the West, but it seems not to be filtering through into India at all. All that people in India seem to be hearing is about how bad it is for women in India, and it's just not true at all. In fact, I had a conversation a few years ago with a family member in India, and she was bemoaning the situation of women's safety in India. And when I showed her the rape statistics, comparing like the US and UK to India, She said, but white people don't rape.
Oh,
So they have this completely skewed idea about what the white person does, because they hold them on such a high pedestal that they believe they're, such civilized, such nice, such sweet people. And that's why then they aspire for their children to learn ballet and not Bharatanatyam, why they teach their children Western cooking and not Indian cooking, why they take their children to English elocution lessons when their children don't know any of the Indian languages. I see this within the neighbors around my Indian family. This is what they're talking about at gatherings, is around ballet lessons and things. It's nothing around Bharatanatyam. And you see them often, they will choose to talk about and watch football or watch Big Boss or go and eat at McDonald's or aspire to eat lots of non-veg, all these things that they think the white person in the West does. But actually what they don't realize is these things as well are like Christianity. They're really falling out of fashion. These aren't trendy things anymore. If you're a well-to-do person in the West who wants to do well in life, maybe become a doctor or an engineer, you don't watch Big Brother, like the equivalent of Big Boss. You don't aspire to eat at McDonald's. You want to have home, fruit and vegetables and healthy meals cooked at home. So they've got all these ideas around the white person and their education system, their way they live their life, their religion, all being so civilized and perfect and sweet. And at the same time, everything about India and Sanatana Dharma being shameful and bad and backward. And that's why it's so dangerous, because they are going to be in future generations that when these ideas trickle through the generations, they're just going to get stronger and stronger, as I can see. And it's going to be for the loss of all the beauty within Sanatana Dharma, all the knowledge within Sanatana Dharma, and it's going to be irretrievable. And at the same time, what they're going to be facing are all the problems that the West has faced, which is 1 in 6 people on antidepressants at any one time, severe obesity, and all the issues that the West now are realizing and trying to move away from. So to me, it's just so stark, this contrast between what's happening and the trends in the West and what's happening in India, where they think they're looking up and trying to do what the Westerner, the white person would be happy to see them do. But actually, in many cases, the Westerner either doesn't care at all. They're so self-absorbed in their own lives. They don't care what's going on in India. They don't care if someone's copying them. Or they might even just laugh that people are trying to copy what is the worst type of thing to do in the UK. It's what people in sort of the lower strata of society watch football, watch Big Brother, eat McDonald's. It's not what middle class, aspiring India needs to be trying to do.
Okay, well, that's very well explained, and right down at the behavioral level. That's a very good insight coming from you. And actually, this is what I've also been saying at times. When the people say that what is the way to rescue the what is called the self-confidence of the average Indian. So I just tell them that just try and think of a strategy to make Sanatana Dharma fashionable. Make it fashionable. And how to make it fashionable? If there are people who just want to copy the West, so I think we can tell them that this is the trend in the West. Okay, I think there's something that we can start the trend in the West, column. Yeah. Maybe in the Jaipur dialogues, we can start a trend in the West. You can help us with that, and then we can every week we can put out that what's trending in the West. And so if the yoga trending in the West, or it is the Upanishads trending in the West, or vegetarianism trending in the West, and Bharatanatyam or the Indian dances trending in the West. And what is not trending also, that is also important. Yes. What is not trending? So Big Brother is not trending. So I think that's sort of a thing. I think let me, this is just loud thinking. I think we can put together some kind of a column on that, or some kind of a what is called an advisory on our portal, and maybe we can inspire a few more people to do that. So that was very, very, very interesting, Melissa ji. And as I promised, I have to leave my viewers a little early today. Of course, I don't much care for this the Julian Gregorian calendar, because I think this is very unscientific. But that is the trend. That is still a global trend, though getting probably a little less popular. And also, I have noticed this year there was a big pushback against Christmas also in India, at least on the social media. So we did notice that. So with that, we go into the audience question and answers. I haven't seen many questions. If you have questions, then do let them come in now as we go into the question and answer round, with the normal request to the viewers to please like, subscribe, and share the video. Press the bell icon and continue with your magnificent support.